The moment the front door closed behind them, my entire world began to fall apart. I stood in my sister's living room, listening as the taxi pulled away from the curb. Brooke and her husband Jared were gone, heading off on their Caribbean cruise. 5 days of sunshine and relaxation for them, while I stayed behind to babysit their daughter. I turned around with a smile, ready to ask my niece Nola what she wanted to do first. Maybe we could bake cookies, watch a movie, or read together like we always did. But Nola was not reaching for her tablet. She was not opening her text-to-speech app. She was not typing out words for a robotic voice to read aloud. She was standing completely still, staring at me with an intensity I had never seen in her 8 years of life. Then something happened that shattered everything I believed to be true. My niece, the child I thought had been mute since she was a toddler, opened her mouth and spoke. She warned me not to drink the tea her mother had made, telling me that something bad had been planned. Her voice was clear and steady, as if she had been speaking her entire life. In that instant, my blood turned to ice. I could not breathe. I could not move. The thermos was still in my hands, suddenly feeling heavy and dangerous, like an object that did not belong in my world. Before I go any further, I need to explain how I ended up standing there, realizing that everything I thought I knew about my family was a carefully constructed lie. My name is Lisa Rains. I am 32 years old, and I work as an accountant at a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio. While most people dream about travel or adventure, I find comfort in spreadsheets and balanced numbers. My therapist says I use numbers to feel in control, and she is probably right. That morning had started quietly. It was a Saturday, and I was enjoying coffee alone in my apartment when my phone rang. It was my older sister Brooke. There are 6 years between us, but sometimes it felt like 60. Her voice was unusually sweet, which should have been my first warning sign. Brooke only used that tone when she wanted something. She told me that she and Jared had booked a last-minute anniversary cruise and needed someone to watch Nola for a few days. As always, I said yes. I told her I would love to spend time with my niece. And I meant it. I genuinely adored Nola. Even though communicating through a tablet could be exhausting, there was something special about her. She had big, observant eyes that seemed to notice everything. When I read to her, she would lean against my shoulder and relax, as if my voice made her feel safe. Brooke had always said that Nola was born with a rare neurological condition that affected her ability to speak. The doctors noticed it when she was about 3 years old, and Brooke claimed nothing could be done. I never questioned it. She was my sister, and mothers are supposed to know their children. I was not around much during Nola's early years. I had taken a job in Chicago shortly after she was born and only visited home occasionally. By the time I moved back to Ohio, Nola had already stopped speaking, and Brooke had already shaped the story everyone believed. I returned home 2 years ago when our mother became seriously ill with cancer. During those months, I spent more time with Nola than ever before. We built a quiet bond through books and routines, even without words. Our father had passed away earlier, the steady presence that once held the family together. When our mother died, she left behind a trust worth over $1 million. The terms were clear. Both Brooke and I had to approve any major withdrawal. That same morning, I drove to Brooke's house. She greeted me with a hug, which was unusual. She looked flawless, as always. Jared barely spoke, appearing nervous and distracted, but that was not unusual for him either. Before leaving, Brooke walked me through the house and handed me a large thermos filled with herbal tea. She insisted it would help with stress and told me I looked tired. Something about the way she pressed it into my hands felt wrong, but I smiled and thanked her, like I always did. When the taxi arrived, Brooke hugged me again and rushed out the door. Jared followed silently. The door closed. The house became quiet, and that was when Nola finally spoke. Standing there in the kitchen, holding that thermos, I realized that my niece had just done 2 impossible things. She had spoken, and she had saved my life. I slowly placed the thermos on the kitchen counter, treating it like something dangerous. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped it. Then I turned back to Nola and lowered myself to her level. I needed to understand what had just happened. She looked frightened but determined, her eyes wide with fear and resolve at the same time. She made it clear that she had always been able to speak. Her mother had forced her not to. The room felt like it was spinning. I had to steady myself on the floor as the weight of her words sank in. According to Nola, she had never been born mute. She never had a neurological condition. That story had been a lie. When she was a toddler, she spoke normally. She learned words quickly, sang songs, asked questions, and said good night and I love you like any other child. Then one afternoon, everything changed. She had been playing upstairs when she became thirsty and went downstairs to the kitchen. Her mother was on the phone and did not notice her standing nearby. Nola did not understand most of the conversation, but she clearly heard her own name and mine. She heard her mother talk about removing me from the picture and taking control of the money once certain people were gone. The next day, confused and innocent, Nola asked her mother what being out of the picture meant. That was when her mother's behavior changed completely. Brooke grabbed her arms too tightly and spoke to her in a way that terrified her. She warned Nola that if she ever spoke again, something terrible would happen to me. She told her that her voice was dangerous and that every word she spoke would cause harm. Nola loved me. She believed her mother. At only 3 years old, she made a decision that no child should ever have to make. She stopped speaking to protect me. For 5 years, she lived in silence, afraid that using her voice would hurt the person she loved most. As she explained this to me, I broke down on the kitchen floor. I cried not only for myself, but for the unimaginable burden placed on a child so young. Brooke had used fear to control her, shaping silence into obedience. During those years, Brooke took Nola to doctors and presented herself as a devoted and concerned parent. She accepted a diagnosis of selective mutism, but told family and friends a different story, claiming it was a permanent neurological condition present from birth. She controlled the narrative completely and made sure no one ever questioned it. I thought about the plaque displayed proudly in the living room, praising Brooke as a model mother. In that moment, it felt like a cruel joke. As Nola continued, I realized that her silence had made her invisible. Adults spoke freely around her, assuming she could not understand or would never repeat what she heard. She witnessed everything. She saw her mother practicing my signature repeatedly until it looked convincing. She overheard phone conversations about the trust fund and plans to transfer assets. She watched her father grow more fearful and submissive, agreeing with everything and never questioning her mother's actions. Behind closed doors, Brooke played a role for neighbors, teachers, and the community, presenting herself as a selfless parent making sacrifices for a disabled child. Then, shortly before the trip, Nola overheard something that finally forced her to break her silence. She heard her parents discussing the tea that had been prepared for me. It was meant to make me violently ill, not to kill me, but to leave me hospitalized and incapacitated for several days. During that time, they planned to travel to another city to meet a lawyer and transfer the entire trust into Brooke's name using forged documents. They believed I would be too sick to stop them and too weak to fight back afterward. Hearing this, Nola realized she could not stay silent anymore. She spoke because she understood that this time, the danger was real and immediate. When she finished telling me everything, I pulled her into my arms and held her tightly. This brave child had carried the truth alone for years, watching her mother lie and manipulate everyone around her. She had broken her silence not for herself, but to save my life. As I held her, my fear began to change into something else. My tears dried, and a cold clarity settled in. Brooke believed she had days to execute her plan. She believed I was already defeated. She was wrong. I looked at the thermos sitting quietly on the kitchen counter. It looked harmless, ordinary, like something made with care by a loving sister. But now I knew it was evidence. Something inside me shifted. Fear gave way to focus. The first call I made was to my friend Gwen Mercer. We had known each other since college. She became a nurse, while I became an accountant, but we stayed close. Gwen was the kind of person who showed up without questions when something was wrong. When she arrived, still wearing her scrubs, she took one look at my face and knew this was serious. I told her everything. The tea, the plan, and the truth about Nola. Gwen listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at Nola with a mix of admiration and heartbreak. She made it clear that what Nola had done took extraordinary courage. Then Gwen shifted into professional mode. She explained that the tea needed to be tested immediately. She knew someone at the hospital lab who could run an urgent analysis. Wearing gloves, she carefully collected a sample from the thermos and sealed it properly. After that, she asked what other evidence we might have. I turned to Nola and gently asked if she knew where her mother kept important documents. Nola led us to the home office and pointed out a locked drawer. She knew the code because she had seen her mother use it many times without noticing she was there. When the drawer opened, the truth was impossible to ignore. Inside were bank authorization forms bearing my signature. At first glance, they looked convincing, but I immediately saw the differences. The shape of certain letters was wrong. Brooke had practiced, but she had not mastered it. There were also bank statements from the trust account showing a pattern of withdrawals over many months. Each amount stayed just below the reporting threshold, careful enough to avoid automatic scrutiny. When I added it all up, Nearly $200,000 was already gone. Printed emails followed, exchanged between Brooke and an attorney in another city. They discussed emergency transfers of trust assets and described me as mentally unstable and incapable of managing finances. Then I found a folder labeled with my name and references to mental health. Inside were handwritten notes describing fabricated episodes of paranoia, depression, and erratic behavior. Brooke had been building a false record, preparing to discredit me if I ever challenged her. Seeing it laid out so clearly made my stomach turn. This was not a moment of desperation, it was a long-term plan. Gwen photographed every document carefully. She confirmed what I already knew. This was deliberate fraud and forgery. Later that night, the lab results came back. The tea contained a powerful combination of laxatives and sedative herbs. It was not lethal, but it would have caused severe illness and extreme drowsiness for several days. Hospital-level illness. Exactly as Nola had described. Brooke had never intended to kill me. She only needed me incapacitated long enough to steal everything. That realization chilled me more than the poison itself. I thought about my emergency savings, money I had set aside quietly years earlier on the advice of a financial planner. It was meant to be my safety net, and now it would fund my fight. There was one more call I had to make. I contacted Kevin Calloway, a former classmate who had become an assistant prosecutor. I explained everything from the beginning. When I finished, he confirmed that the crimes involved were serious and crossed into federal territory. He told me that law enforcement would handle the legal side, but there was one critical condition. Brooke could not know that I was aware of her plan. If she suspected anything, she might disappear with whatever money she still had access to. To stop her, I would have to do the unthinkable. I would have to pretend that her plan had worked. I would have to act as if I had drunk the tea. I would have to act as if I was sick, weak, and completely helpless. For several days, the performance of my life, and I was ready. I began my role the following day. Nola sat beside me on the couch, quiet and observant, old habits still clinging to her even though she could finally speak freely. Gwen remained close, ready to step in if anything went wrong. I contacted my sister and left a message describing how sick I felt. I made my voice sound weak and unsteady, explaining that I had been vomiting, dizzy, and barely able to stand. I made sure to mention the possibility of going to the hospital and apologized for disrupting her trip. When the response came, it was not a phone call. It was a brief message, wishing me a quick recovery and reassuring me that Nola would be taken care of by the neighbor if needed. There were no questions, no concern about my condition, no request to speak to her daughter. That response told me everything I needed to know. Over the next day, I continued the performance. I sent updates describing worsening symptoms and exhaustion, reinforcing the illusion that I was completely incapacitated. Each message was crafted carefully, designed to make my sister feel confident that her plan was unfolding exactly as intended. While I played the victim, everything else moved quickly behind the scenes. Gwen and her husband helped track digital traces that Brooke and Jared had carelessly left behind. Despite claiming to be on a cruise, Jared had shared photos online that revealed their real location in another city. They were exactly where Nola had said they would be. Meanwhile, I returned to the office drawer, certain there was more hidden beneath the surface. At the bottom, under old financial records, I found handwritten letters. They were written by Brooke to our mother during her final months of illness. In those letters, Brooke demanded that the will be changed in her favor. She accused our mother of favoritism and insisted that I did not deserve the inheritance because I was single and childless. The manipulation was cruel and relentless. Then I found my mother's response. Her handwriting was shaky, weakened by illness, but her words were firm. She refused to alter the trust and made it clear that she would not reward greed or punish responsibility. She expressed disappointment in who Brooke had become. Reading those words broke something inside me. Even at the end of her life, my mother had protected me. As I sat there, overwhelmed, Nola came to the doorway. She told me that her grandmother had once warned her quietly to watch her mother because something was wrong in her heart. At the time, she had not understood what that meant. Now, it was painfully clear. That evening, Kevin contacted me with updates. Law enforcement had been fully briefed. The evidence of fraud, forgery, and attempted poisoning was being taken seriously. Federal authorities had been consulted because the crimes crossed state lines. The lawyer Brooke planned to meet had also been contacted. He had already been uneasy about the documents and agreed to cooperate fully once he understood the truth. A sting operation was set. When Brooke and Jared arrived at the law office believing they were finalizing the transfer, investigators would be waiting. My role was simple: I had to keep pretending. I continued sending messages describing my illness, reinforcing the illusion that I was powerless. With every update, I imagined my sister reading my words and believing she had already won. But the truth was, everything was about to collapse. I was not physically present when everything came apart. Instead, I watched from my sister's living room through a secure video connection arranged by Kevin. Nola sat beside me, holding my hand, while Gwen stayed close. On the screen, I saw Brooke and Jared enter the law office. Brooke looked composed and confident, dressed professionally and carrying a folder filled with documents she believed would secure her victory. Jared, on the other hand, appeared nervous and uneasy, his fear visible in every movement. They approached the receptionist and were guided down a hallway toward a conference room. Inside, the atmosphere immediately shifted. The attorney Brooke intended to meet did not greet her warmly. Two unfamiliar individuals were seated at the table with him. Brooke hesitated, sensing something was wrong, but she continued forward, attempting to maintain control. As the questioning began, Brooke confidently confirmed her identity and her role in managing the family trust. She still believed she could manipulate the situation. Then the evidence was placed in front of her. Two signatures were compared side by side. One was mine, taken from verified records. The other was from the authorization forms Brooke had submitted. The differences were subtle but undeniable. Brooke attempted to explain it away by suggesting my handwriting was inconsistent and questioning my mental stability. She claimed to have documentation supporting her statements. That was when her narrative unraveled. The investigators revealed that her claims had already been reviewed and disproven. My employer had confirmed my reliability and attention to detail. Medical professionals had verified my mental and physical health. Independent statements described me as stable and trustworthy. One by one, the foundations of Brooke's story collapsed. More evidence followed, bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals, emails detailing plans to transfer trust assets, forensic proof confirming forgery. Finally, lab results confirming that the tea she prepared contained substances designed to incapacitate me. Jared visibly broke under the pressure. But the final blow came when the investigators played a recording. It was Nola's voice. Clear, calm, unmistakable. She described how she had been threatened into silence as a child, how she had overheard plans to steal the trust, and how she had spoken up to stop her mother from harming me. She explained that she had remained silent for years out of fear and love, believing her voice was dangerous. The room fell silent. Brooke stared at the device as if it had betrayed her. She insisted that her daughter could not speak and claimed the recording was fabricated. That statement sealed her fate. Medical records were presented confirming that Nola had never been mute, but had instead developed selective mutism as a result of psychological trauma. The abuse was now undeniable. The mask Brooke had worn for years shattered completely. What remained was anger and desperation. Jared finally turned against her, admitting his involvement and agreeing to cooperate fully. He explained that he had been afraid of her and had gone along with the plan out of fear. Brooke was arrested on the spot. As I watched her being led away, the woman who had controlled and terrorized everyone around her was finally powerless. Nola squeezed my hand. It was over. 2 weeks later, I sat in a small family courtroom in Franklin County. The room was plain and practical, filled with fluorescent light and the quiet weight of broken families and difficult decisions. This time, something was being put back together. I sat at the front table wearing my most professional outfit, the one I usually reserved for important meetings. Nola sat beside me. She had chosen her own dress that morning, purple, her favorite color. She had brushed her hair herself. She was nervous, but she was no longer silent. The judge reviewed the case carefully. Brooke's arrest, the charges of fraud, forgery, and attempted poisoning. The extensive documentation of psychological abuse inflicted on a child over several years. Jared had signed away his parental rights in exchange for cooperating with prosecutors. He had known what was happening and had done nothing to stop it. He no longer had any claim to Nola's future. The judge looked directly at Nola, not at me. He acknowledged the courage it had taken for her to speak again after so many years of silence. Then he asked her, in her own words, where she wanted to live. Nola stood up. She said she wanted to live with me. She explained that I was the only person who had ever truly seen her, even when she could not speak. I had read to her, listened to her, and never made her feel broken. She added that I also made very good pancakes. The judge smiled as he signed the papers. Emergency custody was granted to me. As we left the courthouse, Nola could not stop talking. She spoke about the room, the people, what she wanted to eat for lunch. and the small details she had noticed along the way. 5 years of silence had finally given way to freedom. That evening, we ate dinner together in my apartment. Our apartment. I had already begun turning the spare room into her bedroom. Purple walls, shelves full of books, and a quiet reading corner by the window. She talked through dinner, telling me everything that came to her mind. Stories, questions, ideas. I listened to every word. She began therapy the following week with a specialist in childhood trauma. Some days were hard. Years of fear did not disappear overnight. There were moments when silence tried to return. But there were more good days than bad. Days filled with laughter. Days filled with stories. Days when she came home from school excited to talk about friends who had never known her as the silent girl, only as Nola. Brooke accepted a plea deal. The evidence against her was overwhelming. I did not attend the hearings. I had better things to do. The trust fund was frozen and audited. Most of the stolen money was recovered. I became the sole trustee, managing it carefully for our future. I sold the family home and used part of the proceeds to create an education fund for Nola. Sometimes I think about my mother. About the letter she wrote when she was dying. About the warning she gave her granddaughter. She had seen the truth long before I did. I like to believe she would be proud of how things turned out. One quiet morning, Nola and I sat on the balcony eating pancakes and drinking orange juice. She told me about a dream she had, filled with impossible creatures and silly adventures. None of it made sense. It was perfect. She stopped and looked at me, then thanked me for listening. For truly listening, even when she could not speak. I told her I always would. Some people mistake silence for weakness, but sometimes the quietest voices are the strongest ones of all. Nola found her voice. And I found my family,